Hello guys, and welcome to another tips and tricks video. In this video we're going to go over the best climbing tips that helped me achieve 1700 LP on the North American server. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe, or just share the video. It all helps. I hope you enjoy this video and I hope it helps you climb towards your peak this season. Thanks for watching. So the first and most important tip I can give you guys to start off is that macro and decision making is just way more valuable in League of Legends than mechanics will ever be. Back in the day, you'd see players like Rush, just play Nidalee, Lisa, and get rank 1 career no problem. Nowadays, Rush can barely climb. The issue with him is that he isn't very smart of a player and just makes very hyper aggressive plays. It just goes to show that mechanics aren't all that right now, and that there's other ways of just getting leads without having to be the most flashiest or best player ever. If you look at my champ pool for this season, none of my champs really require that much mechanics in order to climb. They're all based off efficiency, pathing, knowing when to dive, knowing when to go for X plays, Y plays, etc. All comes down to objective control, vision denial. All these things are just so important assets to a jungler that they can just increase your statistics and chances of winning, rather than just relying on hitting spears on Nidalee, insecting on Lee Sin, etc. When you've accumulated enough experience to know how much damage you can soak, how much damage your teammates can do, you can basically put yourself in scenarios like this one I'm about to show on screen that can leave LCS players, probably the best ADCs, even speechless.
What? They just two-man to Baron at 20 minutes? Well, alright then, partner.
The second most important tip I can give you guys is to play a playstyle that fits your playstyle pretty much. So if you're having great success playing tanks such as Amumu, Sejuani, Trundle, then it's going to be harder for you to transition to the likes of Lee Sin, Elise, Nidalee. Another important asset to finding champs that suit your playstyle is ping. So obviously the lower ping you have, the better connection you have. So if you have very low ping, you want to stay away from the likes of no skill champs like Pantheon and such. Better to go for Karthus, Talia, etc. Especially in Korea where everyone has extremely low ping. People like playing the higher skill cap champs because it's easier. Whereas if you're on NA and you have 70 ping, probably want to stay away from Nidalee, Elise, Lee Sin. Play something like Hecarim, Rek'Sai because they take less skill and are just therefore that more efficient and give you a higher chance of winning the game pretty much. Tip number 3 comes with a lot of experience and hours invested in the game, but it's pretty much just understanding win conditions. So put yourself in a scenario where your Sivir is 0-10 and you know for a fact that Sivir is really good in team fights and just as a champion overall, she has wave clear, she has an ult speed up buff for everyone, and even if she's really behind, there's a certain point in the game where you can just like let her do her, whatever she's feeding the entire game. If she wants to win, you'll still have a chance of winning. Whereas if your assassin is actually super behind someone like Talon, they'll never be useful in the entire game. So instead of getting Sivir ahead and trying to help her out, go help the mid laner, go up the top laner, get your assassins ahead or your carry potentials instead of just putting all your time to the wrong lane. This tip doesn't only apply to lanes or champions, there's also like objectives and towers that can come into play. Just certain scenarios where I'm in games where I'm like, do we go for Baron, do we go for Elder Drake? These all will become clear to you one day. But in theory, I would always go for Baron if enemy team has too much wave clear and you can force a 1-3-1 split push or 1-4 split push, or go inhibitor if they have no split push, and you can get Baron whenever you want. Tip number 4 is to get the carry ahead. Whether you're playing duo or solo, sometimes I play with an AD carry player that's really good. I'll try to make sure they get all resources depending on the situation. If you consider yourself a carry player, like myself, I play Hecarim, Rek'Sai, Kha'Zix pretty much, then I need to put myself in situations that'll be merely beneficial to myself and not my teammates. This does not mean that I'll be playing for KDA and last hitting kills to make myself look better, but the fact that I'm going to be getting myself more ahead and be able to soak as much damage as possible, output damage, while going in and out of team fights. Just make sure to realize that you aren't always in a position to carry, therefore you shouldn't play as if you are. So if you're playing a champion like Elise and weren't able to transition into the late game and aren't really one of the most important threats on your team, then you can give all resources and buffs to someone that's more efficient in the late game and doing way better than yourself as a champion. Tip number 5, and probably the most underrated tip I can give you guys, is to build items that are both offensive and defensive. So an example of this would be the TL versus Echo Fox game last weekend, where Xmithy built a BF sword instead of a Hex Drinker versus multiple sources of magic damage, such as Galio, Kai'Sa, Silas, and also Gangplank. Even Skarner has some. But that's besides the point. I'm not saying they lost this series because of this build, but in general, he could have probably tanked more damage and done more in the long run, which would in theory give his team a better chance of winning. Something you can look at from my perspective is my Kazakh setup. So instead of building full lethality, one-shotting one person, just instantly dying in fights, my setup allows me to go in and out of fights, absorb and deal a lot of damage, while negating many of the enemy's cooldowns in fights. Hence why my Kazakh's win rate is like 81% in Challenger and my highest win rate right now. This makes my Kazakh setup and playstyle a lot more unconventional, putting my enemies out of their comfort zone of like one-shotting Kazakhs that are really squishy, and this just makes up for the fact that I have this 81% win rate in Challenger on Kazakhs, which is my highest win rate right now, by the way. Again, I hope you guys enjoy this video. I try to give you guys the best tips and tricks. Honestly, I could say stuff like don't be toxic, do this, play meta, etc. But I want to give you my perspective, how I did it from beginning to end, and how I reached 1700 LP. I love you all. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.
Sweaty sheets, sometimes it's deep. I'ma smoke upon the weed if I can't sleep. If you can't sleep, you should call me.